Sentry mode activated. Target acquired.
Hey there, riders, and welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Still using a bow, so it's counting. Anywho, today I'm going to be talking about the next part of my team core, which is going to synergize with my para poison core, and that is the ZinoBros core. Now, I did talk about using Thunderlord Zinogres in my last video for the para poison core, but I did make some changes to Thunderlord that I want to talk about, and then I'm also using his opposite, Stygian Zinogres. So let's discuss these two monsters, their uses, genes, and kind of what I'm doing with them. So first, let's start about Thunderlord, since this is kind of recap. So he is my para status inflictor, but there are some changes. First is that I don't have inflict rate up, which is still very important because it's plus 20% chance to apply statuses, and para are typically pretty low, around 20 or 30% chance to apply, so getting it up to like 50% is pretty huge. But we also know now that multi-attacks that can inflict status will have a chance to apply per hit. So something like Thunderbug Volley and Kieran's Lightning, which hits about 5 times, have a chance per bolt to hit. So, you know, that's 50% with 5 hits is pretty much guaranteed to paralyze, which is pretty huge. So that's kind of why Kieran can stun lock monsters. So if you do want a paralysis monster, that's definitely the setup you want. Use those two genes. Now, my Zinogres, however, I moved to a more offensive oriented setup. I'm running All Out and Crit XL for some fat damage, because All Out increases your damage chum by about 20% at the cost of 20% more kinship gauge. And then I grabbed the Thunder Fist skill from regular Zinogres because it's a melee attack that does heavy thunder damage, it can win head to heads, and it can crit. I think I had potential in the slot, which was just like a defensive buff when you're on low HP, which is pretty negligible. So I did lose a power bingo to get this skill, which is kind of lame, but this attack is already really strong, and there's not a whole lot of other good thunder genes. I'm working on getting synchronized, and that'll fit that in somewhere, but that's pretty much it. And I don't want to lose any more thunder bingos to put like inflict rate up right now, so I'm gonna keep my Thunderlord where he's at with 2 power and 4 thunder bingos. But you know, getting All Out and Crit XL is gonna be worth it, trust me. Having a tech and speed coverage as well is gonna be pretty nice, and this is important to me because, you know, you get to the end game content and you realize how much you need to match elements, and it's night and day difference on the damage. So being able to have one thunder monster which attacks that can cover everything, you know, power, speed, tech, it means I don't have to switch over to a lower damaging option just to win head to heads and such. So while mine is no longer built specifically for status, the Thunderbug Volley can still apply paralysis at a pretty good rate if I need it, and he is a lot stronger now with these passive buffs and higher crit skills. So there are 2 ways you can set your Thunderlord, status focused or attack based. I find that I get enough status procs from my hammer that I don't really need to focus on, you know, going all out status on all my monsters. So that's why the Thunderlord's going to be slightly changed here. And so let's talk about his counterpart, which is my personal Fatalis Slayer, Stygian Zinogres. So Stygian is one of the 3 dragon type monsters you can use, being him, Double Joe, and then Dragon Palamute. I mean, if you want to count that. So we don't have very many options. Now, Joe isn't a terrible monster. His stats get pretty insane when he's starting it to like level 70. He has slow growth, so that means his stats are really bad up until about 50. But the reason why I don't use him is because he's a power type, and we have a lot of power monsters already. Stygian's tech, and we really don't have very many good tech mons. Now, what makes Stygian a great choice is that nothing really is resistant to dragon either. I mean, it's always at least okay in damage, and on the flip side, the only things that are weak to it is Rathian, Joe, Ivory, and Fatalis. So, I mean, most of the time we're going to be doing neutral damage, which is fine. Now, Stygian also has really high crit rate for a Monsi, and that's kind of the reason why I'm focusing on this build with him. For all purposes, he's basically just the dragon form of Thunderlord. He's got the same buffs, he's got coverage moves for power, but sadly there's no speed dragon option yet. And Stygian's base crit, along with his dragon boosting buff that increases crit and having crit XL genes, makes Stygian have some pretty high crit rate. I mean, it's got to be a 50-50 at this point. And he's slapping for about 1.8 to 2.2k pretty regularly with Dragon Fist. Now, I also gave him Dragon Eater for a strength option that can leech HP, and he's got Dragon Breath for AoE. Now, Stygian Zinogres is not really used often as far as I can see, since we have so many Elders and Deviants, and there's not very many monsters weak to Dragon in the first place, so he's often overlooked. But I definitely want people to give him a try. If you need a Dragon or a Tech Monstie, he's really solid. Now, Joe and Stygian's genes are pretty much interchangeable, so you can take this exact same setup over to Joe if you want, but like I said, I just didn't want a power monster. Joe has low crit rate, so you might not want to use Stygian's buff. You can use Joe's buff, which just does flat damage and doesn't do crit. So I wanted to talk about these two monsters because they actually work really well together, because Thunderlord covers Stygian's weakness to thunder, and the dragon element on Stygian is basically a blanket good for everything in case I need it. And since we don't really have good options for water and ice genes, there are going to be times where I'm using monsters that don't have a matching element to enemies. So having an all-around good attacker like with Stygian here is a great backup in my book. Anyway, that's all I really got for now, so thank you all for watching and good luck out there, hunters, and whatever you may be hunting.